Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Stephen Epstein, with you this week for this week's 10-minute Torah. So, a lot of you folks have been contacting me, and it's so um, wonderful for me, so heartening for me to hear that you enjoy these little discourses. I certainly enjoy doing them, and I really need to acknowledge Sherry Reeder. May she rest in peace. Years ago, I think I've been doing this for, today I'm doing this right on the anniversary of my ordination, my 5-year anniversary. So I've been doing these maybe 6 years, maybe 6.5 years, and they've kind of evolved a little bit. But it was really Sherry's suggestion that I go ahead and do these little things. In fact, it was Sherry's idea years ago, too, that we record our services for those people, those Jewish people that really kind of, are cooped up because of medical issues and they can't get out. And what a great thing if they could tune in. So she's a little bit before her time. So thank you, Sherry, wherever you are. So this week, Chukat, Parashat Chukat, we start to see some of the consequences of the Israel being in the wilderness. Now, it first starts off, what does the word chukat mean? It comes from the word chuk, which means a decree. So there are basically two types of commandments. There's a lot of different ways to categorize the commandments in the Torah. One way is they have to do with God and religious observance. The other thing is just your fellow's interaction with the other fellow, right? How you get along in society. In this case, the two categories, you can say, are the mishpatim, which are the judgments, and the decrees, which are because I said so. So the judgments make sense. Judgment, don't steal, don't lie, don't gossip, be honest in business, respect elders, respect the stranger, et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that are important for members of society to get along if you want a nice, properly functioning, positive functioning society. If you don't want a positive functioning society, then buyer beware and withhold information in a business deal and don't leave your car unlocked. Somebody may get in, jump it and drive away with it, and then not sure what we can do. It's your fault if somebody stole your stuff. Myself, I never kind of understood that reasoning. It's the way it is. Just like buyer beware. That's kind of a permission, license to kill, license to cheat somebody. Well, you didn't know, so, it's your fault. I don't know, whatever. We'll be here for a lot more than 10 minutes, let me tell you. But the decrees are, they just don't make sense on a rational level, but we do them anyway. Probably the most common, the most well-known decree is what? Kashrut, right? Well, why can't I eat ostriches? Everybody else seems to enjoy them, and shrimp. Well, you look at a shrimp or a lobster. I don't know why somebody would want to eat that, a creature that looks like that anyway. Some people would say that about any living creature. Okay. But there are certain things we can eat, certain things we can't, because you eat them and you're holy. And people have tried to conjure up reasons through the ages as to, well, why can't we eat, swine or pork? Well, because did you ever see a pig, wallowing in the mud? Well, I was on a kibbutz and I had to deal with chickens, and I'm not really quite sure I want to eat them either, after seeing what they do. So, who knows, right? God said so. That's why we do it. We have here a very interesting decree, and it's the decree of the red or brown, if you will, heifer. Now, when a person is in a room where somebody had died, they are contaminated. They are spiritually contaminated. And yes, we can rationalize this by all sorts of medical things and bacteria and whatever you want to do, but the bottom line is you have to take a cow that is red or brown, however you want to judge the color, can't have more than 2 hairs that are not red or brown, cannot be a heifer that has had the yoke, that's had to go out and do work. All right. And we take it, completely burn the animal, and we use the ashes and water in a mixture, in a combination, to sprinkle on somebody to purify them. And the person that is purified, the person that is contaminated is purified. The person that does the purifying is likewise contaminated. And they're the ones that have to go out now, and they're contaminated. They got to, go out and get purified themselves now. So interesting. One word of note. Going back to the end of Genesis, how did Jacob know who Joseph was? He was old, his eyesight was failing, he was fragile, he was frail, because Joseph reminded them that the last thing that they studied in the Torah before Joseph was abducted and by his brothers and sold into slavery was the law of the red heifer. Now, this is going to bring up some questions from you. It's going to say, wait a minute, Torah hadn't been given yet. And it really trips people out when I say that, there's a gap of, I think it's 14 years in Jacob's life. And the Midrash, the folklore, says that he was studying Torah at the Academy of Shem and Eber. People say, wait a minute, there was no Torah. Yes, there was. There has always been Torah. Torah is God's teaching. What we think of Torah these days is that big blue book that we have on Saturday. Oh, there's the Torah, or the scroll that's in the ark. There's the Torah. No, there is the writing of the written Torah. But God's law, God's teaching has existed since there was God, which is, always, Yud Hey Vav Hey, was, is, and always will be. Kind of a concept for our feeble brains to wrap around, right? But this is the story of the red heifer. The other thing that happens in this portion is Aaron goes off to die. God says, prepare yourself for death. I'm going to take you. And, and people say, wow, he dies, how traumatic. Well, it wasn't really traumatic for him. He was taken by what they call the kiss of heaven, which is a lot like plucking a hair out of a glass of milk. That's the way it's described. This man was so evolved, not perfect, evolved. Let's draw that distinction because Aaron made some mistakes in his time, right? That's why he's not, going off into the promised land. And he goes and lays down in a cave, takes off his vestments, transfers them to Eliezer, his older son, who is now going to take over as high priest, and lays down, and that's it. Now he's with Hashem. In heaven, world to come, whatever you want to believe. So that's the end of Aaron. Moses, is under stress. He's been walking around the wilderness for 39, 40 years with a bunch of whining, complaining, ungrateful Israelites that just couldn't stop. I want to use the word, I'm just going to say complaining. I wanted to use another word, but I'm going to leave that alone because that's basically what it was. This is a guy who was 120 years old at this point. He was 80 when he went back to Egypt, and it's been 40 years. I mean, this is an old guy. He's had his problems, right? He's just, So these people come and say, we need water. Miriam, Maya, Miriam, same root, water, is gone. We want water. We want to drink. And God said, well, see that rock over there? Go talk to it, and it'll burst forth water. And Moses is just kind of at the end of his rope. Takes his staff. He goes, all right, here you rebels. You want water? We're going to give you water. Bam! And the water came bursting forth. And God goes to Moses and said, you didn't sanctify me. You didn't do what I told you to do. You made me look ridiculous. You made yourself look ridiculous. You messed up the commandment, so I can't have you going into the promised land either. So, was it about the fact that he struck the rock instead of talking to it? Big deal. Water came out anyway. No, the issue is he didn't sanctify God. The same verbiage, the same words that were used to explain why Nadab and Abihu, why their lives were taken by the bolt of lightning, right? They went into the Holy of Holies when they shouldn't have, with a mixture of incense that was alien, it was foreign, it wasn't the proscribed mixture. And they were in there like a couple of frat boys just having a grand old time. Disrespect, no sanctification. Moses didn't show that he didn't respect God by doing this in front of all of Israel. And God's like, look, this is the last straw. Now, it's amazing, and I'll leave you with this. It's amazing that a man like Moses would succumb to the stress. On the other hand, hindsight is 2020. I'm going to leave you with this, and we're going to talk about this Saturday. It's easy for us to look back and judge Moses. If you were in the wilderness and you spent your life as a slave, and you're out in the wilderness and you see all these miracles happening, and what would you have done? Would you have been sensible and said, oh, great, we're free, we got God now on our side, we're good to go? Or would you have shown the same frailties as the rest of Israel? We Jews today, we've been through a lot of miracles. We're still surviving, and yet a lot of us still doubt Hashem. So think about that, okay? Shabbat Shalom, everybody.